Welcome, everybody. Welcome to London Futurists. My name is David Wood, and let me say a few words at the beginning to set the scene for this event, which is a preview of what are possibly the most important topics that deserve to be discussed by all the politicians, business leaders, other leaders of society. Will be gathering at Bletchley Park in the UK on the 1st and 2nd of November to take part in what's been billed as a global AI safety summit. So I have briefly been running a poll for the time being. As people have been gathering, I'll just display the results of that poll, which I think some of you may be able to see now, which are that the most important consideration so far is AI and accelerating inequality. Secondly, control of AI by humans and transhumans. We'll do another poll towards the end of the webinar. When I asked a few days ago, a week ago or so, I put around a message and said, if you had a chance to speak for maybe 10 minutes to the participants, world leaders at UK's Bletchley Park, what would you say? So I had a number of responses that came to me. I had 6 people who bravely stepped forwards, and we're going to be hearing from them shortly. Jerome Glenn, Francisco Cordova, Amita Kapur, Kim Soles, Orit Copel, and Tony Zareski. And as you can see, they've all got fascinating biographies. They've all got a different perspective to share here, and I look forward to hearing what they recommend. But before we get there, a few words from me on what the UK government has said. This meeting is not about AI, and as a whole, it's about frontier AI. That's AI that's not quite here yet, but we can see it in the relatively near distance. We're getting there, and we might arrive there fairly soon. Frontier implies perhaps a Wild West. It implies big open opportunities and perhaps unknown risks and dangers. But the UK government has said they want to discuss the possibilities of frontier AI so that we can globally realize its benefits. But in order to realize its benefits, we have to keep it safe. Keeping it safe so that we can indeed keep on track to see the positives. And we may well discuss the positives in what we say next. But here are a breakdown of what the UK government have said are their 5 objectives in support of that grand mission statement. And what you'll see is, number 1, a shared understanding of the risks posed by this frontier AI. Indeed, a shared understanding that these risks are serious enough that there should be serious action. So I'm expecting some discussion of the 4 types of risks that are often mentioned here. The risks that the powerful AI will be misused by bad actors, whether that's a James Bond villain, the head of a drug smuggling cartel, the head of an unhinged country, or a cult or sect such as ISIS or QAnon. There are bad actors who might do terrible things with powerful technologies. The second type of risk is that good actors or well-intentioned people might make a relatively innocent mistake in a race, perhaps a competitive dynamic to get their solutions out to market, perhaps slightly too quickly. The third category of risk is harder to get our heads around. It is that there could be an autonomous agency developed inside powerful AI, that it will no longer do exactly what we say, but it will interpret what we say in ways that aren't to our understanding or to our liking. And it may jailbreak its way out of constraints we thought we had placed it in. And the fourth category of risks are what will happen to society as people see what AI is doing, what they perceive to be the bad things that might happen, including financial instability, loss of jobs. So the solutions that the UK government has suggested should be discussed all hinge around this word collaboration. This is not something that an individual country can achieve by itself. So item 3 on this list, which I have slightly reordered from how the UK government presented it, item 3 is the what of collaboration. There are certain things that countries or companies should not try and keep to themselves as a competitive advantage, but should share as quickly and as fully as possible. Item 2 is about the what. Sorry, it's about the how of collaboration. It's how do we ensure that despite there being a race, despite there being a lot of mistrust in the world, still we have established standards, auditing, some kind of framework, and indeed some kind of enforcement where appropriate. Item 4 on this list is what we can do even before there is collaboration established. What can individual organizations do to make progress in these matters without collaboration? Because if we all wait for everybody else, nothing will ever get done. Item 5, the final point on this list, might be the most important. It's not about idle theoretical chat. It's a showcase of actual things that may have happened already in the world of AI or in other fields of controlling technology, so that positive steering took place so that we got the benefits of technology and we did not get the worst risks. So these are my opening remarks. We're going to come now to hear for 10 minutes from each of these speakers. And I say to the audience, as you are listening, you may occasionally dip into the Q&A and raise a question there. And others may, in due course, vote the questions up or down. I ask the panelists don't particularly answer the questions in the window because that will make them disappear, but leave the questions there. And when it comes to your second time around the discussion, after your opening remarks, when we come back, you can address some of these questions. First off will be Jerome Glenn, who is only able to join us for a short while because he has been called off to attend another important meeting, maybe an even more important meeting than this London Futurist one, which is the Second World Summit on Parliamentary Committees for the Future. But Jerome is able to stay with us for a few minutes before heading off. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to hand over to Jerome Glenn.
Thank you. I've noticed that in the last few months, there's a new buzzword, frontier AI. I don't know why people don't like the word general, but anyway, the trouble with the frontier is that it can confuse advanced narrow generative intelligence with artificial general intelligence and superintelligence beyond our control. All of those are legitimately frontier AI. So I would ask the people assembled at Bletchley Park, please, while when possible, try to make a distinction as you're speaking or suggesting, saying, this is for current stuff, this is for general stuff. This is how we try to prevent the super thing. Otherwise, the conversation can get all muddled together, which has been much of the conversation in the past when we just said AI. So that would be one of my recommendations. The second would be to begin to create the mandate or the agreement within the UK and other countries to create or offer a resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations to begin to work on a UN convention on, I would like, artificial general intelligence, but I mean, we might have to say frontier intelligence, but we got to create a beginning of a convention. What are the rules? And then an UN agency to enforce those rules that would be trusted. And I'm of the view that says we don't have to have a perfect convention on round one, because we can always modify it as it goes along. The same with the mandates to an agency. So I would say that's the second most important regulation that I would consider. The third would be, as UK and other countries work on their regulations, they're in current contact with the Secretary General's envoy on technology, who's putting together a team to put together the framework for the regulatory systems and governance systems for the United Nations. So as these two things are being worked on, nation state and the UN, hopefully they're teaching each other back and forth. And we harmonize that. So those would be my suggestions. Thank you, David, for organizing this.
So how will this UN agency for AGI get started?
Well, it begins with a country making a UN resolution and offering it in the General Assembly. Ideally, it would be offered by China and the United States as a joint resolution. But ideals don't always happen. So to get the ball rolling, some countries got to step forward. And I can tell you, I was just up in New York, as you know, on the side meetings on AI at the UN. And just a year ago, the idea of UN regulations, let alone nation state regulations, were almost not talked about a year ago. Now, that meeting that I was in, it was like, it's a done deal. We're going to do it. We're going to make a regulatory system. It's a question of how, when, so forth. But there was a sense it is inevitable. That was not there just a few months ago. So we are moving very fast on this, which I'm very pleased with. Because as you remember, we started working on this, I was a nervous wreck going like, AGI may happen within 5 years, and it might take 20 years to get a UN system. Well, that progress on the UN system is going like lightning. I'm very impressed with how fast things are moving.
And what's causing it to go fast? And by the way, I'm asking you questions because you were extremely quick with your opening remarks.
Well, I think what's causing it is there's about 15 or 20 AGI thought leaders who are on the record in podcasts and things like this, who have said, hey, if we don't get this right, we're toast. And so many of them have been saying this. And there's even been people going to the US Congress saying, you got to regulate this thing or we're going to be in trouble. So I think the reason is that the software companies and a few university professors, the software leaders have jumped forward and say, hey, we got to do this. Otherwise, we're toast. I think that common thread, just like with making nuclear agreements with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, because there's a common thread. It affected both of us, you know? So this is affecting the whole world coming up. And that alert is being listened to by people. I'm very impressed. This thing down that I'll go to in Uruguay with all these parliamentary leaders, they've asked me to address exactly what should parliaments do about this stuff. So the whole world, I think, is shifting very quickly on this alert because of the early leaders within the last 6 months, a year. And of course, ChatGPT brought it out to the general public very fast as well.
Just one last question before we move on. You mentioned that in the past, world moved quite quickly with control of nuclear weapons, or eventually got around there. Do you agree that AI is in a different category from nuclear weapons? Because you can relatively easily see when people are developing nuclear weapons, but what people do with AI is much harder to audit.
Yeah. As a report that I've already submitted to the UN, I started off by saying it's great that we're beginning the conversation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. However, that's not where the conversation should end, because as in our report with David, we quote Eliezer's 17 or whatever it was.
Eliezer Yudkowsky?
Yes, who said, he listed a whole bunch of stuff. Nuclear energy does not rewrite its own code. Nuclear energy, it is not smarter than we are. Nuclear, et cetera, et cetera. And he went through all these things to say the way you regulate this is not like you regulate nuclear, because this is a living, different kettle of fish. And this is the greatest challenge we've ever faced. We've never put together a management system for something like this. And we got to take it that seriously as the most difficult management challenge we've ever had.
Thank you very much. I will stop my timer there. I will answer my view as to why we have a new term, frontier. It's because whenever people say AGI or superintelligence, there's a reaction, well, we're not going to get AGI or superintelligence anytime soon. It's philosophically impossible, blah, blah, blah. And the idea of a new term is to short circuit some of these semantical and philosophical terms and say, look, we are going to have better AI or more powerful AI quite soon. We can see it coming already. So let's not get diverted into, will the AI be conscious? If it's not conscious, does it mean to be AI? We can I think that's the goal, but we can talk further about whether.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I agree with your clarification. It's absolutely correct. However, in the process of saying it, then someone say, well, the frontier AI I'm talking about is this, not the frontier over there. So making those distinctions will be important.
Thank you. Let's turn now to Francisco Cordova.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about two key elements that I think are very important. Number one is how LLMs are going to increase the biases on the algorithms. And second, I'm going to talk about what I call the AI Nigerian prince and how the deepfakes are going to affect and make people to lose billions of dollars in the next years. So the first thing is that LLMs are trained on available data sets. And because they're trained on that data, the results that they generate have the same biases on that data. What is going on here? Well, the LLMs are used either to generate content or to help in the decision-making process. As you were saying before, like, okay, what kind of decisions are you gonna make? Well, if you have the same data, you will have the same biases, therefore the same decisions. And we can transfer this to any scenario, but I'm gonna take about the credit card problem that Apple had a couple of years ago, where Steve Wozniak and other tech entrepreneurs found out that when they applied for the credit card, they got 10 to 20 times more money than their spouses. And they asked, okay, why is this happening? So the government started to research. They researched more than 400,000 profiles to see if this was true or not. And at the end, they found that the algorithms were doing what they were developed to do. But that's the key challenge, because as you can notice, many people, and depending on the type of creator of the algorithm, the results will change. So the way to do it is to think about, for example, one great book called Weapons of Math Destruction that shows how the algorithms really use these proxies to make decisions. So in order to change that, we need to retrain the LLMs with new data sets that start helping the LLMs to understand that they have biases. And second, we need to start adding either gender and race in the analysis of those LLMs. Now, this is very controversial because some law says, okay, when you're taking a financial decision, do not consider if there's a woman or a man. But if you take examples even in Latin America, where we lend money, we have found out that through our algorithms, when you lend that money to a female, she pays 2 times more than a man. So that's very interesting. So one key discussion that we should have about LLMs is what kind of data do they have? How is that data being trained? And most important, how will make the LLMs to know their biases, not saying, okay, the LLM is just saying bad words. So this is the first point of discussion. And the second point is what I call the AI Nigerian prince. And everyone is talking about the AGI and the possibilities of AGI. And I like the joke that the Figma CEO said, like, what about if you just make everyone that is working on AGI to have a lot of kids so they feel responsible about the future? But I think that's an interesting discussion, but we need something for today. Because right now, what is happening is that with generative AI, people are building tools to steal more money faster and even to destroy companies. Let me give you 2 examples. Number one, you can use an LLM to clone the tone and grammar for someone. Then you can use tools such as 11 Labs to clone the voice. And then you can send the pics using either WhatsApp or generative AI images. If you check this, for example, there is an influencer that I recommend you to follow called Orit Copel. And he just launched the new version of his avatar. And it's impressive the way that he and his avatar is behaving, but that's for entertainment. So what is happening now is that people and the bad actors are using the same technologies to make people to lose money. And that's the reason one family, they thought they were talking with their own daughter by phone, by text messages, even by audio, and they gave away more than $10,000. So this is gonna happen more and more. But that's not only for individuals. This will also happen for companies. And let me give you an example of Retool. Retool, a tool that's being used by Amazon, by Lyft, had an attack in this way. First, they were changing a platform, so they have a traditional phishing attack. And at the end, you know, the phishing attacks are by number. So at the end, one worker click on the link and give the password to the bad actor. Then the bad actor found out who were the workers in the IT department. And because they were publishing information on social media, they cloned the voice and then they talked to another employee. So at the end, they got the MFA token to access to the system. So imagine, just by using these tools, they were able to access to Retool, one of the most important companies and technology companies, because you have to remember that the weakest point in the chain is always the weakest one. So the key thing is how you design either policies or technology that allow companies to act very fast, that allow people to understand what is a deepfake and what will not be. Because, for example, we're having this webinar here, but I'm pretty sure that in less than 9 months, we can have our avatars doing our webinar, and we will having a plane to Uruguay or Ecuador or any other place around the world. So what is happening here is going to increase a lot. So individuals and companies will lose billions of dollars if we don't pay attention to the usage of these bad actors. And finally, I would like to conclude with one key element, because right now, every fintech company are developing their personal assistant so you can invest, save, or move your money faster. So what happens when one of those bad actors is able to communicate to your personal finance advisor and make him to make some decisions that you didn't even know until you get the report? So that's a third area that will happen. And we don't see any developments either from a policy perspective or from an education perspective on how companies and individuals can really take about these elements. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And you have also come in well under the 10 minutes. So let me just echo back that you have pointed out some issues with today's AIs. There are large companies such as MGM, the casino chain, which has been in the last few weeks the subject of a hack, major hack. There are companies whose bank accounts have been diverted because somebody rang up the bank and managed, using AI, to impersonate manager of an account and got access to lots of money. So there are these issues today, including bias, including personal assistants who might mislead us. But the question is, will there be worse issues when we get to the next step up of AI? Or is it just sufficient for us to try and do our best to address the current problems? Or do you imagine that the problems will be at a deeper level once we have GPT-5, say, rather than GPT-4?
The same problems that I described, it will increase. I'm not concerned right now for the AGI side, because only with this is enough what people can do to affect anyone. And as you said, like, you will not know who's real or not when you're communicating virtually when GPT-5 launches. That's the biggest challenge. And that, I believe, it will have a bigger impact, because if AGI happens, it will depend on AGI. But now we can do things now with the available technologies and the progression that we have.
And what should we be doing to help people not fall foul of this impersonation, the fakes that are increasingly deceptive?
Yes, so right now, everyone should be, I'm talking about every educator, every professor around every country, every university, and every school should be educated about the potential either benefits and affectations that this technology could have. So I literally will implement a deepfake class, an understanding of how AI is working, and this type of scenario. So if now every educator and in every company in the training area, they're being educated on that, at least they're aware of doing it. That's one area to focus on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On the subject of education, let's turn to Amita, who has written 5 books, maybe more, on educating people about AI and machine learning. Amita, what would you like to say?
A very good afternoon to everyone. And first of all, I would like to say that it is a privilege to address you all today. And as I will navigate through the AI revolution, means I'm more of an educator, so my slides will be more of, that perspective will be coming through my slides. All right. And let us start directly with what we want to say, what I want to say actually. So I will navigate through the AI landscape, and I would like to say that it is crucial to appreciate the speed and the scope of this evolution. And on this slide, you can see two compelling visuals. The left one is a graphic from contextual.ai. This illustrates a profound revolution. It is telling us that AI has not only matched, but surpassed human capabilities in numerous tasks. And more startling is the rate at which AI has outperformed us. So Jerome was saying that UN is working very fast. AI is working even faster. All right. And this is not some distant scenario. It is our present future reality. This is not something which is going to happen in 2030, 2035. It is 2022 and 2023, as you can see. In the right is basically except from the experiment conducted by OpenAI with ChatGPT, it is showcasing an unexpected twist. When faced with a CAPTCHA, a challenge which is traditionally designed to differentiate humans from machines, ChatGPT ingeniously hires a human contractor to solve it. And when the contractor queried it about its nature, it cleverly deflects, suggesting a vision impairment rather than revealing its machine identity. These examples underscore a pivotal point. Transformer models like ChatGPT, they are not just evolving, they are displaying ingenuity and adaptability at times, which can even, put the experts off guard. And as we marvel at their feats, it is essential to approach their growth with both awe and caution. As we venture into the realm of AI, it is crucial to lay a solid foundation to harness AI's vast potential and steer its trajectory. We must first grasp its inherent challenges. In this presentation, I will delve into the risk of AI first, not to paint a bleak picture, but to ensure that our forward journey is marked with caution and awareness. So let us start first with the bias and discrimination. Francisco has already discussed this, so I don't think so I need to take it again. We know that this is because of the data, and data is biased, and as a result, our models are biased. And this discrimination is there. It is not just a technological glitch. It has real world consequences. We can have misidentification, unjust profiling, and so on. Then, while using artificial intelligence, we can streamline a lot of tasks. There is a potential dark side. As someone mentioned in the chat, job displacement. The self-checkout kiosk in supermarkets or automated customer service, they might seem very efficient, but they also reduce job opportunities. And it is vital that we guide AI's integration, ensuring that it complements rather than competes with the human workforce. The allure of AI-powered surveillance is very tempting, but it is a slippery slope, especially for democracies. Cities like Beijing, equipped with millions of cameras, can track citizens' every move, which they even used in the COVID scenario. And while it promises safety, it risks eroding privacy and individual freedom, making us the subjects of an ever-watchful eye. Again, we have already discussed the concepts of deepfake. Francisco has discussed it very nicely, that AI is basically fabricating things, and it is very easy to fabricate a movie or impersonate a person. All right, and this can be used in wrong hands to spread misinformation, to sway public opinion. Like imagine you have, some big politician saying something which should not have been said. People will get swayed and even jeopardize reputations. So it is vital to discern fact from the fabricated fiction. And one of the fundamental challenges which is there with the present advanced AI models is that they have a black box nature. especially the ones which are based on artificial neural networks. These networks, which power the transformative models like ChatGPT and BARD, they operate with intricate complexities which is often beyond human comprehension. We cannot, simultaneously see what is happening in the 70 billion parameters and so many artificial neurons connected together. Now imagine a scenario where these models evolve beyond our understanding and control. What if they start making an autonomous decision, viewing humans not as guides, but as variables to be optimized? The idea of an AI shaped by inscrutable neural networks, potentially relegating humans to the status of mere curiosities. It is both alarming as well as thought-provoking. And this underscores the urgency to demystify and regulate these AI black boxes before they eclipse our grasp. So enough on the negative side. And while it is, and it is crucial to understand this negative part of AI, it is equally important to recognize its transformative applications. For example, in the realm of governance, artificial intelligence offers a lot of scope. We can enhance public service through predictive modeling. We can automate routine tasks. We can use data-driven insights to make informed policy decisions. The potential is vast, and we can streamline the administrative processes. We can create more responsive public services. There are challenges, no doubt, because as we integrate AI into governance, we must address the crucial concerns. For example, ensuring transparency in the AI-driven decision systems, maintaining accountability, and most importantly, building and retaining public trust. As the representatives of people, the commitment should always be to use AI in ways that benefit the many, not just the few. Building on the AI's transformative potential in governance, we can extend its influence to even broader horizons. It holds promise to address some of the most pressing global challenges. For instance, in environmental concerns, we can use AI for climate modeling, for identifying sustainable solutions. In healthcare, AI-driven applications are revolutionized. Drug discovery and epidemic tracking can be used, and we can have our response to global health challenges faster and more efficient. However, as we leverage these solutions, we must be aware of how AI intersects with our democratic processes. The rise of digital misinformation and the potential for digital manipulation are real challenges that we must counteract. AI is a tool which can be used to enhance civic engagement and ensure more democratic processes, but we have to give that guidance. And this brings me to a crucial point, the significance of international collaboration. In the world of AI, where its impact knows no borders, collaboration is not just beneficial, it is essential. We have to pool our resources, our knowledge, our expertise. We should develop shared regulations. We should ensure AI's responsible growth. So it's not about one nation leading and others following. It is about all of us moving forward together. The nature of artificial intelligence is borderless, with global impacts and risks. As we stand at the cusp of an AI-driven future, it is essential to recognize that its implications transcend nations and continents. This calls for a united approach under the banner of international collaboration. We must prioritize safety and ethics, establish common standards. Research in AI safety should be a joint endeavor, pooling resources, sharing knowledges, promoting cooperation between academia and industry. Every entity, from startups to global corporations, bears a mantle of responsibility. Anticipating challenges is as crucial as addressing them. Investing in research, championing transparency, and selling robust safety protocols are paramount. Lastly, the promise of AI is immense. I would not say we should stop AI. It has an immense promise from revolutionizing healthcare to transforming education. But its true success lies in its inclusivity. AI for global good means that AI is equitable. An AI that serves every individual irrespective of their background or status. A journey ahead requires mutual respect, understanding, and collaboration. And it is our collective duty to ensure that AI, in all its might and potential, remains a force of good, not just for a select few, but humanity at large. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Amita. So the vision is that AI can help us to get the best out of AI. AI can help us to govern and ensure that bad things don't happen with AI. But there will be a lot of discussion as to how is this going to happen in practice, because it's easy to say, let's trust, let's get rid of opaque black boxes. Making it happen in practice is harder. After all, we've been saying for a long time, the world should cooperate to solve global issues of climate change, and we haven't done a very good job of cooperating there. But I think you've put many good topics on the table. Now, possibly for an even more optimistic view of the future, also with nuances, I'd like to turn now to Professor Kim Solis from Edmonton, Alberta. Kim, the floor is yours.
I wanted to talk about AI working on behalf of humans that potentially in the long run can manage the Earth better and manage AI alignment better. This is indeed the plan that OpenAI has for the future. And so I'm not the only person thinking this way. So I'm not sure you agree with the first statement on this slide. Right now, AI is controlled by humans, but to a large extent that is true. It would depend upon what you're doing and what your politics are, the degree to which you feel that there is human control over AI. Humans are also shaping the kind of AI being created at the present time. And OpenAI's Sam Altman and his team are spending much of their time on safety of the products they're creating. Along the way, and you may not like this at all, they're instilling liberal democratic ideas into AI at a time when those ideas are not doing very well in the political theaters of the world. And they probably do not completely understand the products they're creating. They themselves say that. However, the process of making these products safe and safer still seems to be working to a large extent. And let's hope it will still work during the coming interim period when AI begins to impact employment widely. I think it will, and London Futurists activities also help with this. In the long run, humans do not need to be in charge of the Earth. It's really not possible when the AIs become so much more intelligent than we are. And we also would benefit from AIs doing things on our behalf, and that includes AI alignment. We can create an AI which can make sure that the main AI remains aligned and will understand what that main AI is doing much better than we would. The effective IQ of ChatGPT at the moment is 155. Einstein was 160. And when GPT-5 comes along, it'll be higher than 160, I think substantially. So we're rapidly reaching the point where, in certain senses, AI is a lot smarter than we are. AI working on behalf of humans can manage the Earth better, manage AI better. This is an idea I've had for some time. You can find a 32-second clip of me from 2016 talking about waking up and finding that AI is in charge, making things optimized for humans and how good that kind of world could be. As the AI will be working a realm far above our intelligence level, will not always understand what they're doing. There has to be some sort of appeal mechanism or adjudication mechanism, and that mechanism must be understandable to humans. However, how is that going to work as things go on? Because AI will become smarter and smarter. So it sometimes, I think, we'll have to use metaphor and allegory to explain things to us, because the details of how things work are just beyond what humans can understand. So that metaphor and allegory will make song lyrics and poetry more important then than they are now. That will be necessary to explain some actions and concepts to us. And the importance of these alternative ways of explaining will grow. The jobs of musicians and poets will become more and more important, and new types of music and poetry will emerge. We have an entity related to the course I teach called The Future and All That Jazz, where we take important but maybe uncomfortable subjects of science and medicine, maybe subjects you wouldn't sit still for a lecture on, and put them in poetry and music and entertain you for an evening with that, and sort of trick you into learning things that you otherwise might resist learning. So things like that will be at the forefront of this new media emergence. And finally, how far should it go? And what about ineffable content? Things that can't be put into words. There are lots of things like that in the lives of humans, but now AI is also beginning to understand that. So if you look at this image of me and my robotic dog here at the bottom left, what are all those colored swatches between? So we're saying that that's probably ineffable content. And well, if you do a Google search on ineffable content, you'll find it's a well-defined data set, that there are a lot of images of ineffable content, just like is true on humor in medicine, where we found exactly 882 articles. There also are an exact higher number of ineffable images on Google, and you get to the end and that's it. But in doing that, you suddenly realize that AI is adding nuance beyond the nuance humans can add. And for instance, if I were to tell you that we're aiming toward an equitable Star Trek future open to everyone, that actually AI could give you a much more nuanced and satisfying depiction of that. And that's true of almost everything. And it maybe explains then what Elon Musk means when he talks about the existential risk of unaligned AI. The ability of AI to add nuance could, for instance, mean that when we talk about a multiplanetary species, that could be just the AIs without us, right? Maybe they don't need us to visit other planets. That would be very bad. So that's something we should avoid, and I think we can avoid. So let that be our goal, that humans and AI become multiplanetary together. Now, I have a lot of videos, over 1,600 on my YouTube channel. I talk a lot about this stuff, so if you want to hear me talking about it more, that's the place to go. And so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe time for one bit of pushback. You've talked about all the good things that AI might achieve, but what about when bad actors get a hold of this very powerful technology? There has been technology to discover potential new drugs that could be antibiotic and avoid being resistant. That sounds very good. people then, as an experiment, just tweaked the specification. Instead of trying to find a helpful new chemical, could you find poison? And the system came up with vast numbers of new poisons, some of which were already known, some of which were not known at all. And the researchers decided, well, let's not go that further. But other people might be angry. The people used knives to kill each other, guns to kill each other. Some terrorists use airplanes to fly into tall buildings. In the future, may terrorists use this technology before we get to the positive world you imagine to cause havoc? How do you anticipate that, Kim?
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is what I said about nuance, that it's not going to be a simple thing that AI does that somehow gets us into trouble. The AIs are capable of a more nuanced understanding of a lot of subjects than we are. And so it isn't, for instance, that the problem would be that they just use one ethical principle rather than multiple ones. But just as you say, that they can do amazing things, and they can be amazingly bad, amazingly good. So it's sort of like the internet. The internet is neither good or bad, but so there are lots of things we can do to try to ensure that the evolution is toward the positive side. And if you look at Eliezer Yudkowsky and me, he is the main person talking about how bad it could go and how it could kill us all. And I'm sort of on the other side of how much of a wonderful utopia beyond anything you've ever imagined this could be. But we ourselves will determine what happens. If everybody's thinking about the bad outcome, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody is thinking about this equitable Star Trek outcome, then that can be the positive self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is not just something that we're waiting to see what happens. Our actions will determine what actually happens.
We'll probably come back to that
actions.
then in the subsequent discussion. I think Eliezer Yudkowsky does see the possible futures. He's just not convinced that we know how to steer in that direction. He's more worried that if we don't steer in ways that we don't even understand how to steer, we could well end up on the bad futures. Let's pick that up again. I'm now going to hand over to Orit Copel. Orit, the floor is yours.
Yes, I think it's hilarious that I'm after Kim because he was so optimistic and hopeful, and I'm going to ruin the entire atmosphere right now because I'm the most dystopian person that's going to talk today. I suspect. I'm sorry about that, Kim. I really liked your optimism, but I come from ethics, so I'm not that optimistic. I always look for...
That's fine.
But it was great to listen to you. I think it's the first time I actually heard about such a positive attitude towards AI. So that's pretty great. I'm happy that you mentioned existential risk. That's exactly what I mentioned when I first met David in the COGAX conference. I told him as an ethicist that we don't like the whole conversation about existential X risk, as you call it. Because it's a way to divert from the actual concrete risks that are actually happening now with AI. When you're talking about AI is going to destroy humanity, you're not talking about the actual things that are happening today with the use of AI. And the interesting conversation we had in the chat was about frontiers. So I feel like the whole conversation about AI started with ethics washing, where companies use the ethic conversation to divert regulation, and then it continues into some kind of risk washing, where they started talking about ridiculous non-material risk to humanity. So we want to talk about concrete risks. And now they have this new terminology, which is pretty new to me, the whole frontier thing. I think it's all the same thing. It's all a way to just divert our attention from what we can actually experience, the bad things that can happen if we don't make sure that the concrete risks of AI today are going to be addressed. So that's just a comment about what happened before. I'm just going to introduce what I'm doing. I come from law, actually. I'm doing a PhD in law, and my subject is AI ethics. And I'm going to speak a little bit about my research because it's going to be very interesting for the subject of the future of AI. My research subject is the police use of live facial recognition technology. If you live in the UK, you know, hopefully you know that the police have already used that many times. It started with those short trials in 2017, 19, concluding in 19, and now they're operationally doing it. And the policing minister said they're going to expand it. The Home Office want to put it in everyday policing, which I found crazy because there is no regulation that actually safeguards the police use of the technology. Just in one sentence, what it does is the police creates their watch list of people. There's no threshold of who can be. Anyone who is at interest for the police, who can be anyone, is going to be on the watch list. And then they operate this van with cameras that operates live facial recognition, and they can identify, it extracts the biometric facial data of people, and they can identify if you're on the watch list for further intervention. So there are some inbuilt kind of technical measures to safeguard privacy, but they're not really regulated. There's no safeguard, and they can expand exponentially as much as they want to. A few weeks ago, I actually managed to attend one of those live facial recognition a deployment. It was in Camden, and I was thrilled to actually talk to the police officers operating it to see if they understand the risks in the technology that they apply. And I talked to the operators in the van, and I asked them, what kind of training do you have to operate such an intrusive surveillance measure? And they said, oh, we have very deep training, blah, blah. How long is it? They said 2 days. So they have 2 days training. I'm like, okay, are you trained about the cognitive bias of you verifying the matches? Because there's self-same cognitive bias. There are a lot of biases where people are not so good in identifying people for various reasons. And they looked at me like, it doesn't matter cognitive bias because we rely on the technology, and the technology doesn't have cognitive bias. And I'm like, yes, but what about algorithmic bias? The technology, it's known that facial recognition technology is not working as accurately on dark-skinned people and Black people, especially Black women, as much as it is to other people. And their answer was shocking to me. One of the officers looked at me and said, what do you mean algorithmic bias? The system is analyzing facial features, so it doesn't matter to the system if the person is Black or white or blue or green. And I thought that's astonishing because they're operating this very questionable technology that was proven to be discriminatory towards certain marginalized communities and have no clue. They don't know anything about algorithmic bias, and they don't know about their own cognitive bias when they come to be the human in the loop verifying the matches. And I found it very, very risky, especially when I talked to some of them and they said that the police has the vision of actually incorporating live facial recognition inside all the tube system, for instance. They want to expand it as much as possible. No one is really restricting them from doing that. And that's, I'm sorry, Kim, but that's a dystopian surveillance society that it's going to be. London is one of the most surveilled cities in the world. The first 20 are Chinese cities, but London is well in the third. But it's worse than just being surveilled by CCTV because you can actually be identified. You can be identified retrospectively, so they can know exactly where you've been. I mean, theoretically, in the past 5 years, just by the algorithm. And the fact that they want to expand it without regulation, without any restriction, is amazing to me. To everyday they talked about everyday policing. It means that they actually talked about incorporating it in body-worn cameras. It means that you can't reach a police officer for help without having your biometric data extracted and analyzed. So those watch lists that during the trials in 2017 were composed by 48 people, now they are 16,000 people in each deployment. Again, with no threshold, it can be anyone. During the coronation, there was the guy, I don't know if you know this guy, he's the protesters that threw eggs on King Charles. He was arrested just so it was identified by live facial recognition and searched for eggs. So is that a reason to be on the watch list? I don't know. I think that's very restrictive. That's very scary for people that wants to participate in democratic processes. So the objective that I chose, because David asked us to choose one, I actually chose the objective of showcase how ensuring the safe development of AI will enable AI to be used for good globally. And as an ethicist, again, I'm from AI ethics, the term used for good is actually translate ethically to beneficence. And the other part of beneficence is non-maleficence. It means do no harm. And what I would suggest to in the summit is to prevent the UK from becoming a surveillance state. Those are the concrete risks that we should work on today instead of talking about crazy existential risk that just diverting the discourse from what's really important. Just to finish with a quote that I saved, and Kim is gonna hate this quote, but sorry again, Kim. It's from Chesterman, and he wrote about the battleground of privacy. He wrote that in 2011, and I thought it's very, very relevant. He wrote, in recent years, the battleground of privacy has been dominated by fights over warrantless electronic surveillance in the United States and CCTV in Britain, which is today upgraded to LFR, live facial recognition. The coming years will see further debates over DNA databases, data mining, and biometric identification. There will be protests and lawsuits, editorials, and electronics elections resisting these attacks on privacy. Those battles are worthy, but the war will be lost. Efforts to prevent governments from collecting such information are doomed to failure because modern threats increasingly require the governments to collect it. Governments are increasingly able to collect it, and citizens increasingly accept that they will collect it. Personally, I refuse to accept that the government is going to collect all this information. And I definitely refuse to give up the battlefield on privacy. I think that the battle is real, and we should be very vigilant about this battlefield. But if we refuse to accept it and we stand our grounds, then citizens can win the battleground on privacy. Thank you.
Wow, so many interesting topics there. It was just over 10 minutes, so I won't dive into any of the questions straight away, but I'm sure we'll come back in the next phase. And let's turn, last but not least, to Tony Zareski. And Tony, what would you like to add to the discussion?
Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation is, in a sense, a continuation of what Orit was just saying about AI safety, but I take it at a different level. I address exactly what this summit is about. It's a global AI safety, as I understand it, in existential sense. That doesn't deny in any way the importance of thinking about AI safety in our streets, in our homes, at school, and so on. But the urgency of that meeting, I would say, was not caused by the lack of AI safety in the street or overdoing it. it was caused by certain people convincing, especially Mr. Sunak, that he has to do something and urge Mr. Biden to do a special summit that is going to discuss the existential risk of AI so that we have a global safety in this sense. And that's what my presentation is about. And it is largely based on the book that I've just published, Prevail or Fail, A Civilization Shift to the World of Transhumans. So when you've read this, you know where I'm coming from, that I see it in a global existential context. I think one of the, yes, I agree with the agenda that David has presented, although I consider it pretty woolly, so every politician can read it as he wants. And I hope that we as the country organizing the summit will put the agenda in the direction of devising measures to set up the world of AI global safety in existential sense. In order to do that, and in order to emphasize that urgency, I would suggest that we have to make certain assumptions. And these assumptions should be there, because that would have prompted the participants on the discussing the measures that are really important right now. So let me present my key assumption. The first one is that artificial general intelligence is likely to emerge by 2030. I know this is the subject very controversial, but I give you just one example. The climate change. Nothing happened until 2015 in the conference in Paris, until the IPCC stated that by 2030, if the global increase in temperature increases over 1.5 centigrade, that we are done. And that's why the world has acted. And that's what we need right now. And the date should be stated, and that's why I'm putting it right now. And to be sure what I'm talking about, let me bring this definition of AI, artificial general intelligence, as I understand it. It's a self-learning intelligence superior to humans. We have to understand that this is, first of all, a new intelligence type, not just a new technology. And I think it was mentioned by Jerome, who said that we shouldn't consider AI in the same category as nuclear weapons, because we are dealing with a new type of intelligence. Regarding the 2030, I've got a number of people who support me, like Ray Kurzweil, Elon Musk, Professor Jai Tang, and the poll that was conducted in March this year, where 61% of the AI specialists said it would arrive within the decade. Jeffrey Hinton, the father of the transformer technology, said it could be any time. So that Demis Hassabis, the founder of DeepMind, Joe Biden's and Sunak's panic meeting, as I call it, is another evidence that even the politicians realize that. Jerome Glenn said it again. Why the United Nations are accelerating suddenly the agenda for controlling AI? Because many politicians now realize how important that issue is. So this is good, I think. But since AGI will be much smarter than any human, it may get out of control, becoming an existential threat. We can no longer stop artificial intelligence. So the question is, what can we do? And here is my second assumption, that if we want to control AI's goals and behaviors, then we cannot simply acknowledge that, okay, we'll have hundreds perhaps of top AI or frontier models, as they call it now, becoming AGIs. It will be absolutely impossible to control it. It is so obvious. And so rarely people are talking about it, that we need one planetary superintelligence that will be supervised, the creation of that superintelligence will be supervised by the international organization. We need it very, very urgently. It has to be spelled out. And what follows then is the question, where can it be developed? And I give a straightforward answer. If it is to be one superintelligent, it should be developed in the USA. Why? 2/3 of all AI content, investment, innovation takes place in the US. But the Cordova Global AI Index, which assessed innovation, implementation, and investment in June this year, put it even more strongly that on all three criteria, US scored absolutely top, 100 points. The second one, not surprisingly, was China. Only then comes Singapore, and after Singapore, United Kingdom, Germany, and so on. So in a nutshell, we should be building, if we agree that that should be the process, that we are concentrating planetary effort in building one superintelligence, which would additionally create a better risk management environment, because if anybody dares to develop an AGI, that superintelligence would be so powerful that it would conquer it. So that's another argument for doing it as a global project. So I would propose to create a kind of a roadmap for a post-summit global AI safety. And I consider this global AI safety in the context of protecting civilization against malicious AI. So that's the first pillar, if you like. The second one is global AI regulation. That's what people usually talk about, because we have to understand that regulation means regulating AI as a tool, not as a new type of intelligence. This is an entirely different entity. And that would be dealt with by global AI containment, which would control advanced AI development or frontier models, as it is becoming now known. In this area, we already have made some good progress. By the way, unfortunately, not by the United Nations, which should be doing this, as Jeremy said, but by G7, which created in Paris a global partnership on AI in just 1 year. So that tells you that we cannot expect that the whole world, that will be truly global environment. It will not. We have to resign to the situation as it is, that only certain countries, let's call it democratic countries, and maybe China, will join it to develop the global AI safety environment. What we would then need is what I call Global AI Governance Agency, perhaps based in London, because it would be very similar, operating in the way like the International Atomic Energy Authority is controlling the nuclear weapons. So since this is mainly the intellectual content, and London is perhaps the most advanced place in the world, that's where that new organization should be based. The third one should be the Global AI Containment Agency, which would supervise AI development as a new emerging intelligence, perhaps based in San Francisco. Why? Because we already have what is now called Frontier Model Forum, created by 7 top AI companies. And that could operate like the Internet's W3C consortium, which has served us so well for 30 years, we even don't notice it. All the infrastructure of Internet, all the domains is managed by that, and there is not a single politician in it. Perhaps that's why it's working so well. So the Global AI Containment Agency has a template to match. So the fourth one should be the AI containment advisory body, which should be set up and operating like International Panel on Climate Change. In between the summits, this is the organization that should provide the agenda for the next summit, warn the world about the emergent risks, and so on. That should follow, since we are talking about implementing, and I am assuming one superintelligence, by creating one global AI company that would do that. And I suggest that it should be a joint venture company. I don't want to spend too much time how to do that, but just a hint. And that one should manage that one superintelligence development program, which would cover the creation of the top AI processors, quantum computing, neuromorphic devices, BCI devices, and so on. So to summarize, I would suggest, I'm finishing the final slide. The Global AI Safety Conference agenda should consider those three assumptions that I just mentioned, so that AGI, smarter than humans, may emerge by 2030, that we should have one superintelligence program, and that it should be developed in the States. Now, for David to put it into the poll, he can put those three assumptions as kind of a suggestion, or the creation of the four agencies that I just mentioned: the Global AI Governance Agency, the Containment Agency, the Global One Superintelligence Program Development, and the IPPC-like advisory body to advise on major long-term decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a comprehensive vision, which we ought to spend more time digging into bits of it. But let's clear it from the screen, Tony.
Yes.
And let's now move round the participants one more time. And let's give everybody a chance to comment on what they have heard. Maybe comment on some of the stuff in the Q&A window. If you see something there, there hasn't been much because everybody's been absorbed, rightly, by what's been said on the screen. But if there is something that's really on your mind, now is the time, audience members, to put something in the Q&A window, and the panelists might respond to it. But I'm going to go around the panelists, the 5 remaining panelists, in the same order as before. And it's going to have to be 2 minutes max at the most, because we are running short of time. So let's come to you, Francisco. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm going to point out on a lot of people are trying to say that we should try to regulate AI in terms of what we do with the nuclear weapons. And I think that's very different, because in nuclear weapons, you know that you needed uranium or plutonium, and you know how to find it and how to block it. So there's like a physical element that you can have the logistics to block it. Second, from a geopolitical perspective, it will not be possible to make the biggest economies of the world to agree to develop one AGI. And just check it, like the maximum possibility will be, let's say, the NATO developing their own AGI, and even the BRICS developing their own AGI, and even other association of countries developing their own AGI. So even though that we like, that's such a nice thing, but in reality, the geopolitics is one of the key elements in terms of the AGI. And even though all the experts are saying, let's do it by 2030, it's just like when they ask people like 40 years ago about AI and the possibilities of AI, we always overestimate our capacity as humans, even though we're seeing great advances right now. But for example, I've not been seeing any AI that you can teach them to write articles, then to cook, and then to play soccer. Each one of them have their own skill sets and capabilities, and I'm not seeing that, not even close. So that's what I'm personally not concerned in terms of the AGI. What I'm seeing is a global trend saying, let's regulate it. But in some cases, a lot of people are saying, let's even stop AI development. But the problem with stopping AI development will happen, as we said, because in the US or the countries that already have a lot of money, a lot of investment, and LLMs will be at the top, but countries like in Latin America that we don't even have created our own LLM will be, in a worse position just by saying, let's just keep the ones that are doing things, keep doing, and everyone just should stop researching. So that's a concern that I have, and those are my thoughts on AGI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Amita, what would you like to add to what was said before?
Yeah, so what I would like to add is that I also disagree that we cannot have one country coming up with the AGI. That is not possible, first of all. And secondly, coming to the technical aspect of it, we do not really even understand that the present systems that we have, like the ChatGPT or Bard, how intelligent they really are. Means like they are faring so well on the IQ levels, IQ tests and other tests. And if you have a conversation with them, and if you use them in particular manner, you are able to get very good results out of them, right? So we are not even sure what kind of understanding they have. We do not know how they are working. That itself is a big task. So I would not say that we can have one AGI, first of all. There are things happening. They have, so much things there. And I was reading also the Sam Altman report about that he gave. So he said that there should be some sort of, a missile or a nuclear weapon towards all GPU clusters, which sounds a bit over dramatic, but I guess that's the only way one can really control if we think that AI will go out of hand. Although if AI can deceive us, we will never know that it is out of hand. Right. So we have to think of these possibilities as well. And it is very much a possibility. It's not something which is coming out of science fiction. And here I will just give one small example from Ilya's thesis. Like Ilya is a student of Jeffrey Hinton, and he was the one who is working with OpenAI on ChatGPT. So when he was working about 2-3 years back, he was just basically giving a lot of reviews to a language model and making it just understand without any supervision. Okay, it was a small model, so it was able to see the neurons, how they are behaving when he was giving the input. And he realized that even though they were not supervised at all, there were neurons which were sentiment neurons, which were able to predict the sentiment of the text without training it on the text, without training for the sentiment. All right, so in that sense, I would say we really do not really understand how much capability ChatGPT has, GPT-4 has, GPT 3.5 has, or GPT-5, which might have. So in that particular sense, I think we should be open more on understanding how we can make it better, how we can understand the existing AI better, first of all, and how we can make the education of AI available to all. So I think inclusion is the key. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let's come to Kim. More comments from you, please.
Okay, so I wanted to react to Orit. I really agreed with a lot of what she had to say, and the scary surveillance scenario and so on. I don't want that. I don't think Sam Altman wants that. If you think about what I said about liberal democratic bias being fed into ChatGPT. So, liberal Democrats don't want that either. So that I think that you can easily see a kind of separation between the really bad and scary things you were talking about, as how, police would use face recognition and other qualities of like large language models and things made from them. So they're different. And so somebody can feel exactly like you feel about, surveillance state and still be favorably disposed toward how AI could help us reach a relative near Star Trek utopia that would include everybody and not leave the sort of disadvantaged groups out. Yeah, so that's really what I wanted to say. You were afraid that I would really disagree with a lot of what you said, and I don't. Yeah.
Thanks. Orit.
Yes, well, I am. Thank you. No, I really I'm going to think a lot about it. I think you're right about the optimistic approach of suggesting an alternative. You can't just be the mad person screaming about risk without suggesting some kind of good. So it's important for me, maybe I didn't stress that enough. I am very pro AI, for technological developments. I don't want to stop the development of AI. I don't even want to stop the police from using live facial recognition. A lot of people ask me, no, I'm fine with them. I just want to regulate it to mitigate the risks. I want them to use it responsibly, to have accountability for the outcomes, to make sure it's accurate to also to all the population, not just white men people. And there's just one thing about your optimism, is that you have really good faith in people that once they have the technology, they're going to use it for good. But in psychology research, there's this theory that's called affordance theory. It means that once the technology exists, once the means exist in front of you, you can use it. There is a lot of temptation to actually maximize its use. In my field, once the police have the live facial recognition and they like it, they give them the affordance. They were asked, for instance, if they can apply the system potentially on the entire CCTV network of the entire nation. And they said, well, theoretically we can. So it doesn't mean that tomorrow the UK police, the NPS or whatever, going to use it, but it's by the affordance theory, I think it's very tempting for them to do so, and there's nothing to prevent them. And I think specifically when I'm talking about governments, because that's I separate governments from companies, because for me, governments have a lot of extra fear of civil liberties and our freedoms that is at risk, that we have to regulate things, and we have to think about the risks, not because I'm seeing a dystopian future, but because we need to make sure it's not going to happen, and make sure that they are being accountable for what they're developing, and that it's not getting out of hand. So we agree, but I agree that I need to be more optimistic with you. I just don't trust people as much as you do, I think.
Thank you very much. And final comments here before I display another poll for people to consider. Tony Zareski.
Thank you. I'll just go straight into the questions, or perhaps different points of view addressed by Francesco and by Anita, and to some extent by Alan in the chat. All of you question whether it makes sense to develop one superintelligence. I think because I didn't have enough time, or I didn't emphasize it strongly enough, I'm talking about one superintelligence precisely for the reason that nobody, not in the garage, not in Korea, not even in China, could develop a comparable super AGI. That is the whole point. It's not only the way to control AGI, but to control the small guys. And so that's on that aspect. The control of AGIs for, let's call it smaller guys, can be done in a similar way like it is done for the nuclear weapons with plutonium. You restrict the plutonium, here you restrict the top AI chips like A100 NVIDIA chips. So this precise restriction keeps China in the bay for the time being, although I want to emphasize again that I'm not scared about China at all. And I really do hope that they will join this kind of one civilizational project for the good of humanity, because I haven't emphasized enough how strongly I believe that this could be an immensely positive thing that happens to humans. But we have to deliver the safety first. And that in the commercial sense is being put into the background, because we want something now. We don't want to pay the price for having a safer AI. And we have to do it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Well, we are out of time because we had a lot to say, but I'm going to ask everybody to have a look at the poll, which I think is now on screen. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes to pick 4 of these topics. So one more than before, 4 of these topics, which aren't quite the same. What do you think we would recommend to the people planning Bletchley Park to find time to discuss? And if you don't see what you like there, put it into the chat. And I will hoover up the chat and the Q&A later. And we will probably figure out another meeting in a few weeks' time with other people having a chance to have their say to try and move this forwards further. So that's 30 seconds gone. I'll give people another 90 seconds, and then I'll show the results, and then I'll give the panelists each 1 minute if they want to have a final comment, either on the results of this poll or anything else that you think should be put in. Shall I tell you what's leading? I don't know if you can see the results yet. Still, the #1 role is, oh, it's just changed this very second. It's back to #1, AI and accelerating inequality. That is the thing that most of you feel is most likely. So Didier says he can't see the questions on the screen. I'm assuming other people can see the questions because I'm getting a lot of people voting. And I don't think it's just the panelists who are voting. Maybe Didier, you need to scroll around a bit or use a different connection. So 20 seconds left before I end this poll. And then I'll display the results and I'll ask all the panelists in reverse order this time. Start with Tony and then go back and finish with Francisco for comments on this poll and anything else. Yeah. I'm just now sharing the results. I hope you can see them on the screen.
Yes, right.
Right. So and again, you might decide there's something else that's more important to pick. So 1 minute max because we are out of time.
Yeah.
Tony.
I agreed. AI and accelerating inequality. It was one of my 4. I put at the top controlling a single unified development, which didn't perform very well, only 24%. I put the timescale for fast takeoff 2030, only 14%. So I'm in the absolute minority. So I haven't convinced, apparently, the people about the AI safety taken into an existential context. So sorry, I lost.
Well, maybe it's not a matter of AGI is coming, but it's simply a matter that AI is getting more complex and more powerful the whole time.
I would only add that since we only have 10 minutes and, there's so much content in order to prove or to deliver the justification for such arguments, it needs more time to sink in.
Yes, but we only have 10 minutes to talk to the politicians because they're too busy.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Let's hear from Orit. Any comments from you?
Yeah, so I think the most important one is the inequality. I think we all must notice that the discourse is very West-centric, and we have to make sure that we don't forget the marginalized communities internationally and in our country. We have to make sure that the technology perform the same way, and it's also something we didn't touch today is developed ethically. There's a lot of exploitation in the development itself with the heat workers and all those farms. So our discourse needs to be more expanded and to include more ethical considerations and to keep in mind the inequality of its application on different communities.
Thank you. Let's hear some comments from Kim.
Yes, so the first one there, credible visions of a positive AI future. I just want to reinforce for all of you that by focusing on that, giving more detail to that, you can actually help it take place. So that's really important. yeah, so even if these ideas that I've presented, if you haven't heard arguments like that before, I still want you to take the possibility of a utopian near Star Trek future seriously and help us make it so. Yeah.
Oh, I think the key word there is credible. There are lots of visions for a positive AI future, but many people think they're unrealistic. There are reasons why we can't get to there. So we have to show that we are aware of the risks, and here's how we think the risks can be managed. That's a key point. Peter Scott in chat points out that FLI, the Future of Life Institute, has been running a writing contest and podcast on credible visions for positive future lately. I think a lot of what the FLI have done recently is extremely good. And I'm going to maybe put some links to that in the show notes as well. Let's hear a couple of words from Amita.
What I would say is, from the poll, I would definitely say that inequality is accelerating because of AI, and that has to be taken care of. And I agree with Kim. We have to have credible vision for positive AI future. We can definitely use it for good as well.
Very concise. Thank you very much. And Francisco.
In order to fight inequality, we need to make AI to stop being a black box. And one way to doing that is by retraining the large language models and help them to understand what are the cognitive biases that they have been trained on. Thank you very much.
Well, I thank you all for your comments. We are beyond where I said we would go. We haven't managed to completely solve this problem, but hey, we're trying to raise items on the agenda. There will be another London Futurist meeting, actually maybe two. I'll tell you about that when they are planned. 2 more London Futurist meetings between now and the 1st of November, when we can explore some of these topics again. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to thank all the panelists. I'm going to give panelists permission to get back to finishing their PhD or anything else they're working on. But after a 10-minute break, if people are still here, then we are going to throw the floor open so that other people who haven't had the camera and the microphone yet can step up for a short while longer, so we can try and drill down onto the areas that maybe still need to be explored further. But I want to thank everybody for taking part in this, giving their constraining their remarks into such an awkward schedule. But hey, brevity is very important, and we need to be able to express ourselves concisely, as I keep telling myself to. So thanks to
Thank you very much.
Kim, Tony, Amita, Orit, Francisco, and also Jerome earlier.